Stop scrolling. You think you know heartbreak. You think you know power. Imagine Dominic Smith, the most ruthless alpha king on the West Coast, standing in a crowded Seattle bakery. He is moments away from destroying the building to make way for a skyscraper. He is cold. He is heartless. Then, a 5-year-old girl with messy pigtails tugs on his $5,000 suit and whispers the sentence that shatters his world. My mum has the same moon mark. In a split second, the king doesn't just freeze his wolf roars, because that mark isn't a tattoo. It's a royal claim he placed on a woman he thought died 6 years ago, and she is hiding right behind the kitchen door. The rain in Seattle was relentless, hammering against the floor-to-ceiling glass windows of the Sugar Crumb, a failing bakery on the edge of the territory known as Sector 4. Inside, the air smelled of burnt caramel and fear. Dominic Smith adjusted the cuffs of his bespoke charcoal suit. At 32, Dominic wasn't just a billionaire developer to the human world. He was the alpha of the Smith Pack, the apex predator of the Pacific Northwest. He had eyes like shattered ice and a reputation for being completely devoid of mercy. You have until Friday to vacate. Mr. Henderson, Dominic said, his voice a low rumble that made the china rattle on the shelves. He didn't shout. He never had to. The owner, a trembling beta wolf named Arthur Henderson, wiped his sweaty palms on his apron. Alpha Smith, please. My niece. She runs the kitchen. This is all we have. The pack laws say, pack laws favor the strong. Arthur? Dominic cut in, checking his watch. It was a Patek Philippe, worth more than this entire city block. This land is designated for the new pack headquarters. You are evicted. Dominic turned to leave, his beta, Silas, opening the door for him. The bell above the door chimed a cheerful sound that clashed violently with the tension in the room. That was when he felt it. It was faint, like the scent of rain on dry earth, mixed with vanilla and wild lavender. Dominic paused, his hand hovering over the door handle. His inner wolf, a beast that had been dormant and depressed for 6 years, suddenly lifted its head. Lavender. Wait, Dominic whispered. Before Silas could ask what was wrong, a small blur of pink rushed out from behind the counter. It was a little girl, no older than 5, clutching a raggedy stuffed rabbit. She had wild, curly hair the color of midnight and eyes that were startlingly, impossibly grey. Dominic's eyes. The girl didn't seem afraid of the aura of power radiating off him, an aura that made grown men vomit. She walked right up to him and stared up, her mouth open. Daisy, no. Arthur hissed, terrified. The little girl, Daisy, ignored her uncle. She pointed a sticky finger at the side of Dominic's neck, just above his collar. There, visible only because he had loosened his tie, was a jagged, crescent-shaped scar, a birthmark that looked like a moon being devoured. "You have a boo-boo," Daisy said, her voice clear as a bell. Dominic looked down, his expression hardening. "Go back to your parents, child." "My daddy is gone," Daisy said, matter-of-factly. Then she tilted her head, squinting at his neck. "But that's okay. My mommy has one, too." Dominic froze. The world seemed to stop spinning. The rain outside went silent. The beating of his own heart became a deafening drum in his ears. "What did you say?" Dominic asked, his voice shaking for the first time in a decade. Daisy smiled, revealing a missing front tooth. "The moon mark. Mommy has the same one, right here." She touched the back of her own neck. "She says it means she belongs to the stars." Does yours mean you belong to the stars too? My mom has the same moon mark. The air in the bakery exploded with energy. Dominic's eyes flashed from icy blue to a glowing predator gold. That mark wasn't a birthmark. It was a mating crest, a supernatural brand that appeared only when an alpha marked his fated mate. Dominic had only marked one woman in his life, Sarah. But Sarah was dead. He had buried an empty casket 6 years ago after her car was found at the bottom of the Ravine River. Dominic dropped to one knee, ignoring the mud on the floor, bringing himself to eye level with the child. He grabbed Daisy's shoulders, perhaps a little too tightly. "Where is she?" Dominic snarled, his control snapping. "Where is your mother?" Daisy blinked, finally looking scared. She's baking the cinnamon rolls." Dominic stood up, his human mask falling away. He didn't walk toward the kitchen. He prowled. "Alpha!" Silas shouted, trying to intervene. "Calm down. It could be a coincidence." "There are no coincidences," Dominic roared, flipping a heavy oak table out of his way as if it were made of balsa wood. He reached the swinging metal doors of the kitchen. He could hear a heartbeat on the other side, a fast, terrified rabbit heartbeat, a rhythm he would know anywhere. He kicked the doors open. The kitchen was filled with steam. Trays of dough were scattered on the floor. The back door was swinging open, letting in the cold rain. She was gone, but the scent remained. Stronger now. Vanilla, lavender, and the sharp, metallic tang of terror. Dominic walked to the prep table. There, abandoned in haste, was a silver locket. He picked it up with trembling hands and pried it open. Inside was a tiny, crumpled photo of him sleeping taken 6 years ago. "Find her," Dominic commanded, his voice a guttural growl that shook the foundations of the building. "Lock down the city. Close the borders. If she gets away again, I will burn this entire city to the ash. Sarah Miller, born Serafina." Vance didn't look back. She ran. Her lungs burned as she sprinted down the alleyway, clutching her chest. She could still feel the phantom heat of Dominic's presence. It was like a gravitational pull, trying to drag her back into his orbit. He saw Daisy. Oh God, he saw Daisy. She fumbled for her keys, her hands shaking so badly she dropped them into a puddle. "Damn it!" she sobbed, dropping to her knees to scramble for them. 6 years. She had managed to stay hidden for 6 years. She had dyed her distinctive platinum blonde hair to a dull brown. She had masked her scent with heavy industrial vanilla extract every single morning. She had lived as a human, denying her wolf, denying her heritage, all because of Vanessa Street. James. Sarah finally grabbed the keys and threw herself into her rusted 2010 Honda Civic. She locked the doors, jamming the key into the ignition. The engine sputtered, whined, and then died. "No, no, no, please, not today," she begged, hitting the steering wheel. A shadow fell over the windshield. It wasn't Dominic. It was a sleek, black SUV blocking the alley exit. 2 men in tactical gear stepped out. They weren't pack guards. Pack guards wore grey. These men wore black with a red serpent emblem on their shoulders. Rogues, or worse, mercenaries. Sarah's breath hitched. She scrambled into the back seat, trying to find a weapon, but all she had was a rolling pin she'd unknowingly carried out of the bakery. The driver's side window shattered. A hand reached in, unlocking the door. Sarah swung the rolling pin, connecting with a sickening crunch against a wrist, but the man didn't even flinch. He ripped the door open and dragged her out by her hair. "Let me go," Sarah screamed, her claws finally extending for the first time in years. She slashed at the man's face, drawing blood. "Feisty," the mercenary grunted, pinning her against the wet brick wall. Vanessa was right. "You're alive. Vanessa." The name sent a chill deeper than the Seattle rain. Vanessa Street. James was Dominic's childhood friend, the daughter of the Beta, and the woman everyone expected Dominic to marry before he met Sarah. "What does she want?" Sarah spat, struggling against his grip. "She wants to finish the job." The man sneered. He pulled a syringe from his belt. This time, no car accidents, just a quiet overdose in a dirty alley. Sarah's vision blurred as panic set in. She thought of Daisy, still inside the bakery with Arthur. If she died here, Dominic would find Daisy. He would take her. And Vanessa would kill Daisy just to erase any trace of Sarah. "No!" Sarah howled. Her wolf, dormant for so long, surged with the desperate strength of a mother. She headbutted the mercenary, hearing his nose break. He staggered back, dropping the syringe. Sarah lunged for the alley exit, but the second man caught her, tackling her to the wet pavement. "Hold her down," the first man shouted, wiping blood from his face. He picked up the syringe again. Sarah squeezed her eyes shut. "Dominic, help me." She didn't mean to project the thought. It was an instinct, a mate call she thought she had severed years ago. Suddenly, the ground shook. A roar tore through the alley, a sound so primal it triggered car alarms 3 blocks away. The mercenary holding the syringe stopped, his eyes widening. He looked up to the roof of the bakery. Standing on the edge, silhouetted against the lightning, was a massive black wolf. It was the size of a horse, its eyes glowing like molten gold. The Alpha. Dominic didn't climb down. He leaped. He landed on the roof of the black SUV, crushing the metal like a soda can. The mercenary holding Sarah scrambled back, terrified. "It's the King Run." Dominic shifted in midair as he lunged at the first man. Bones snapped. The fight lasted less than 10 seconds. It wasn't a fight. It was an execution. When silence fell, only the heavy breathing of the Alpha remained. Dominic stood over the unconscious bodies of the mercenaries, his shirt shredded, blood dripping from his knuckles. Slowly, he turned to Sarah. She was huddled against the brick wall, soaked to the bone, clutching her knees. She looked nothing like the glamorous, confident Luna she had been 6 years ago. She looked broken. Dominic took a step toward her. "Stay back," Sarah whispered, though her voice lacked conviction. "Don't touch me." Dominic stopped. His eyes were wild, warring between rage and relief. "You're alive," he choked out. "Why? Why did you make me mourn you?" "Because you didn't want me," Sarah yelled, the tears finally falling. "I heard you. Dominic, I heard you telling Vanessa that I was a mistake, that I was weak." Dominic flinched as if she had slapped him. "What are you talking about? I was pregnant," she screamed, the secret finally tearing out of her throat. "I went to your office to tell you, and I heard you laughing with her. You said, 'She's just a human distraction. Once the merger is done, she's gone.'" Dominic's face went pale. He stepped closer, ignoring her flinch, and dropped to his knees in the dirty alley water, ruining his suit pants. "Sarah," he said, his voice intense and low, "I have never, in my entire life, said those words. I rejected the merger because of you. I threw Vanessa out of the Pack lands 6 years ago because she insulted you." Sarah stared at him, confusion warring with her fear. "But I heard your voice. I saw you. You saw a shapeshifter, an illusion." Dominic shook his head, reaching out a hand but stopping inches from her face. Or you heard a lie recorded and played back. Think. Sarah, did I ever look at you with anything but love? Sarah trembled. The memories of that night were hazy, fueled by hormones and insecurity. But the threat from Vanessa's mercenaries just now, that was real. Daisy, Sarah whispered. Is she safe? She is with Silas, Dominic said. She has my eyes. Sarah, she has my scent. He looked at her, his expression shattering. You stole my daughter, he said, his voice cracking. You stole 6 years of my life. But right now, I don't care. I just need you to come home. Sarah looked at his hand. It was large, scarred, and steady. Vanessa sent these men, Sarah said quietly. She knows I'm here. Dominic's jaw tightened, a vein pulsing in his temple. The killing intent returned. Colder this time. Then Vanessa is dead, Dominic vowed. But first, we go get our daughter. Sarah hesitated, then placed her cold hand in his. As soon as skin touched skin, the bond snapped back into place like a rubber band. The rush of warmth was intoxicating. Dominic pulled her up and immediately pulled her into his chest, burying his face in her wet hair. He inhaled deeply, a growl vibrating in his chest. Mine, he rumbled. Yours, her wolf whispered back, against her will. But as Dominic walked her toward his car, shielding her from the rain, Sarah saw something glinting on the wrist of the unconscious mercenary. It was a watch, a very specific, platinum watch with a blue face. She recognized it. It didn't belong to Vanessa Street. James. It belonged to Arthur Henderson, her uncle, the man who owned the bakery. Sarah's blood ran cold. The betrayal wasn't just from the past. It was sleeping in the room next to her daughter. Dominic, she whispered, her grip on his arm tightening. We have to hurry. It's not just Vanessa. The call is coming from inside the house. The drive back to the Sugar Crumb took 3 minutes in Dominic's armored Rolls-Royce. But to Sarah, it felt like a lifetime. She sat stiffly on the leather seat, wrapped in Dominic's suit jacket, shivering not from the cold, but from the realization of who had betrayed her. Arthur, her mother's brother. The man who took her in when she was pregnant and alone. Drive faster, Dominic commanded the driver, his hand resting possessively on Sarah's knee. His touch was heavy, grounding, a constant reminder that he was there. When the car screeched to a halt in front of the bakery, the scene was chaos. Several Pack Guard SUVs had surrounded the building. Sarah didn't wait for the door to be opened. She scrambled out, ignoring Dominic's shout of protest. Daisy! She screamed, bursting through the front door. The bakery was wrecked. Tables were overturned. But in the center of the room, amidst the debris, sat Silas, the baiter. He was calmly sitting on a chair, holding a coloring book. Daisy was on his lap, happily scribbling with a red crayon. Mommy, Daisy squealed, sliding off Silas's lap and running into Sarah's arms. Sarah collapsed to the floor, burying her face in her daughter's curls. Oh, thank God, thank God. Dominic entered a second later, filling the room with a dark, suffocating pressure. He looked at Daisy, his daughter, with a mixture of awe and pain, but he forced his gaze to Silas. Report, Dominic barked. Code Red averted, Silas said, standing up. I intercepted a call from the landline here just after you left. Someone was trying to tell the mercenaries that you had come back for the girl. Who? Dominic asked, though Sarah already knew. Silas pointed toward the kitchen. 2 guards dragged a man out. It was Arthur. He looked disheveled, his apron torn, sweat beading on his forehead. "Sarah, honey," Arthur stammered, his eyes darting around the room. Tell them I protected you." Sarah stood up, handing Daisy to Silas. She walked over to her uncle. Her heart felt like it was hardening into stone. "I saw the watch, Arthur," she said quietly. "The platinum Rolex on the mercenary's wrist. You gave it to him as a down payment, didn't you?" Arthur's face crumpled. "I had no choice. The debts, the loan sharks were going to break my legs. Sarah Vanessa Street. James offered to pay it all off. She said she just wanted to talk to you." "She sent men to kill me," Sarah screamed, the betrayal finally snapping her composure. "You sold me and your grandniece for gambling money." "He's just a child," Arthur yelled, pointing at Dominic. "You brought a monster into our lives. Look at him. He's a beast." Dominic didn't growl. He simply stepped forward, the air around him shimmering with heat. "I am a beast," he agreed softly. "And you threatened my pup." Dominic raised his hand, his claws extended, sharp as obsidian daggers. He was going to execute Arthur right there in the bakery. "Daddy, wait." The small voice cut through the violence like a knife. Dominic froze. His head snapped toward Daisy. It was the first time she had called him that. "Daddy." Daisy walked over, clutching her stuffed rabbit. She didn't look at Arthur. She looked at Dominic. Her eyes, those same icy grey eyes, were glowing faintly. "Don't hurt him," Daisy said. Dominic's claws retracted slightly. "He tried to hurt you." "Little Moon, I know," Daisy said solemnly. "But if you hurt him here, the floor will get dirty, and Mummy hates mopping." It was such an innocent, childish, frantic reasoning that the tension in the room broke. Sarah let out a wet, hysterical laugh. Dominic stared at his daughter, then at Sarah. He took a deep breath, reining in his wolf. "Silas," Dominic said coldly. "Take Mr. Henderson to the holding cells. He can work off his debt in the mines. He is never to see the sun or my family again." "No, Sarah, please," Arthur begged as the guards dragged him away. Sarah turned her back on him. She picked up Daisy, feeling the weight of her daughter in her arms. She looked at Dominic. "Take us home," she whispered. Dominic nodded, a fierce pride burning in his eyes. "Let's go home." The Smith estate was not a house. It was a fortress of glass and steel perched on the cliffs overlooking the Pacific Ocean. It was beautiful, cold, and intimidating everything Dominic was. As the elevator opened directly into the penthouse, Daisy gasped. "Whoa, is this a hotel?" "This is your house now," Dominic said, stepping out. He looked uncomfortable, like a bull in a china shop, unsure of how to integrate a child into his bachelor lifestyle. The penthouse was all sharp angles, black leather, and abstract art. There wasn't a single toy, a single crumb, or a single color brighter than grey anywhere. "It's big," Sarah said, hugging her cardigan tighter around herself. She felt painfully underdressed in her flower-stained jeans and cheap t-shirt. "I'll have the east wing converted for Daisy," Dominic said, pacing. He was running on adrenaline. "I'll hire a staff, tutors, guards. No one gets in or out without my biometric authorization." "Dominic, stop," Sarah said, putting a hand on his arm. He stopped, looking down at her hand. The electricity between them was still there, buzzing under the skin. "We don't need a staff," Sarah said softly. We need to talk, properly." Dominic signaled for a maid who had appeared silently, from a side door to take Daisy to the kitchen for hot chocolate. Once they were alone, the silence stretched, heavy and thick. Dominic walked to the wet bar and poured 2 glasses of amber liquid. He downed one in a single gulp and handed the other to Sarah. She shook her head. "You really thought I didn't want you," Dominic said, his back to her, looking out at the dark ocean. 6 years. Sarah, I tore the world apart looking for you, and you were hiding in a bakery 10 miles away, believing I was a monster. I believed what I heard, Sarah defended herself, though her voice wavered. Vanessa played a recording. It was your voice. Dominic. You said, "She's a liability." Dominic turned around. "I was talking about the merger, not you." He ran a hand through his dark hair, looking exhausted. "My father was pressuring me to marry Vanessa to merge the packs. I told him the merger was a liability. Vanessa edited the tape. She manipulated us both." Sarah sank onto the plush leather sofa. The truth hit her hard. 6 years of poverty. 6 years of depriving Daisy of a father, all because of a lie. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Dominic crossed the room in 2 strides. He knelt before her, placing his hands on her knees. "Don't apologize," he commanded gently. "You protected our pup. You survived. You are the strongest woman I know." He reached up and touched her cheek. His thumb traced the line of her jaw. "But now, you are back, and you are my Luna. I need you to take your place." "Sarah, the pack is restless. They sense the Alpha is unstable." "Unstable." "I haven't shifted fully in years," Dominic admitted. "Not until tonight. Without my mate, my wolf was going mad. If you hadn't come back..." He trailed off, the implication clear. He was on the brink of feral madness. Sarah covered his hand with hers. "I'm here. I'm not running." Suddenly, Dominic's phone buzzed. He ignored it. It buzzed again, and again. With a growl, he pulled it out. His expression darkened. "What is it?" Sarah asked, sensing the shift in his mood. "It's the council," Dominic said, his voice dropping to that dangerous rumble. "They've heard rumors about a child, about a human woman." He stood up, his eyes flashing gold. "Vanessa hasn't just been hiding. She's been building alliances. She's petitioned the council to challenge my leadership. She claims I violated the sacred laws by siring a pup with a human and abandoning them." Sarah stood up too. "But that's a lie. You didn't abandon us. The council doesn't care about truth. They care about strength," Dominic said. He looked at Sarah, assessing her. "There is a gathering tomorrow night, the Blood Moon Gala. All the Alphas of the West Coast will be there. And Vanessa, she will be there." Dominic nodded. "She expects me to come alone. Broken, weak." He stepped closer to Sarah, pulling her flush against his hard chest. She could feel the heat radiating off him. "She doesn't know you have the moon mark," Dominic whispered into her ear. "She thinks you're just a human fling. She doesn't know you are the true mate." Sarah's heart raced. "What do I have to do?" Dominic smirked, a cruel, predatory smile that promised vengeance. "We are going to walk into that gala," he said, "and we are going to show them exactly who the Queen is. But first..." He leaned down, his lips brushing against hers, sending sparks straight to her toes. "We need to get you a dress that stops a heart." The sun rose over Seattle, painting the steel-gray skyline in hues of bruised purple and gold. Inside the Smith penthouse, however, it was already chaos. Dominic had hired a crisis team of stylists, but he hadn't anticipated the one variable that couldn't be managed, Daisy. "I don't want the frilly socks," Daisy yelled, standing on top of a velvet ottoman. She threw a pair of white lace socks at a terrified personal shopper named Mr. Laurent. "They itch. I want my dinosaur boots." Dominic, leaning against the doorframe of the master bedroom, hid a smile behind his coffee cup. He was watching Sarah, who was currently buried under a rack of garment bags, trying to negotiate with their daughter. "Daisy, baby," Sarah sighed, emerging with a hairbrush stuck in her messy bun. "You can't wear rain boots to a gala. It's a fancy party. The Alpha King is going to be there." "He's right there," Daisy pointed at Dominic. "And he's wearing sweatpants." Dominic chuckled, the sound low and rusty. He walked over, scooping Daisy up with one arm. She instantly settled, resting her head on his shoulder. The bond between father and daughter was terrifyingly fast. Her wolf instinct recognized him as safe and strong immediately. "The little wolf is right," Dominic said to the stylist. "Burn the socks. Get her combat boots. Black leather. Custom fit. You have 2 hours." "Mister." Laurent looked like he might faint. "But sir, this is a formal event. The protocol." "My daughter is the protocol," Dominic said flatly. The stylist scrambled out of the room. Dominic turned to Sarah. The playfulness vanished from his eyes, replaced by a simmering intensity. "Your turn." He led her into the walk-in closet, which was larger than her entire apartment above the bakery. In the center of the room, on a mannequin, hung a dress that looked like it had been woven from liquid night. It wasn't just a dress, it was a declaration of war. It was a vintage Christian Dior haute couture gown, modified. Strapless, with a plunging neckline that stopped just short of scandalous. The fabric was a deep, shimmering midnight blue, almost black. But the back was completely open, draped only by thin chains of diamonds. "It shows my back," Sarah whispered, touching the silk. "It shows the mark," Dominic corrected. He stood behind her, his hands resting on her waist, looking at their reflection in the floor-to-ceiling mirror. "Vanessa claims you are a meaningless human fling. Tonight, we don't just tell them you are my mate. We show them." Sarah shivered. "I'm terrified. Dominic, I've been a baker for 6 years. I don't know how to be a queen. What if I trip? What if I say the wrong thing?" Dominic turned her around, forcing her to look him in the eye. "You survived 6 years alone, hiding from the most powerful pack on the coast," he said fiercely. "You protected our child with nothing but your wits. That makes you stronger than any wolf in that room. You don't need to say anything. Sarah, you just need to stand next to me." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a velvet box. Inside was a necklace, a choker of raw, uncut diamonds with a large sapphire drop in the center. "The heart of the pack." Sarah gasped. She remembered reading about it in the tabloids. It was the Smith family heirloom, rumored to be lost. "It accepts you," Dominic murmured as he clasped it around her neck. The stones seemed to warm against her skin. "If you weren't my true mate, the stones would feel like ice." "How do they feel?" "Like fire," Sarah whispered. "Good." Dominic kissed her forehead. "Because we are going to burn their lies to the ground." The Fairmont Olympic Hotel in downtown Seattle had been transformed. The human staff had been cleared out, replaced by pack sentinels. The air was thick with the scent of pheromones, expensive perfume, and aggression. This was the Blood Moon Gala, where the 12 alpha families of the West Coast met to negotiate borders, trade, and power In the center of the ballroom, holding a glass of champagne, stood Vanessa Street. James, she was stunning, in a predatory way. She wore a crimson gown that clung to her curves like a second skin, her blonde hair styled in perfect waves. She was laughing with Alpha Conrad Roth, a rival of Dominic's who had been trying to annex Smith territory for years. "He won't show," Vanessa was saying, her voice carrying over the music. "Dominic is broken. He's been chasing a ghost for 6 years. The Smith pack is leaderless. It's time for the council to intervene. And you, I assume, are the solution." Alpha Roth sneered, swirling his drink. "I am the daughter of the former Beta," Vanessa said smoothly. "I have the lineage, and I don't have a mental breakdown every time it rains." The crowd chuckled nervously. The rumor mill had been effective. Everyone believed Dominic Smith was mad. Suddenly, the heavy double doors at the top of the grand staircase groaned. The room went silent. The music cut off. At the top of the stairs stood Dominic Smith. He was wearing a tuxedo that fit his broad shoulders perfectly, but he hadn't bothered with a tie. His shirt was unbuttoned at the top, looking effortlessly dangerous. He radiated power, a dark, suffocating wave of alpha command that made the weaker wolves in the room instinctively lower their heads. But he wasn't alone. On his right arm was a woman who looked like a goddess carved from moonlight. Sarah. Her head was high, her dark hair cascading down one shoulder, her grey eyes sweeping the room with a cold calculation she had learned from survival. And holding Dominic's left hand, skipping slightly, was a little girl in a black velvet dress and heavy combat boots. "Impossible," Vanessa whispered, her champagne glass shattering in her grip. Dominic began to descend the stairs. Every step was a thud that echoed in the silent room. He didn't look at the crowd, he looked straight at Vanessa. They reached the ballroom floor. The crowd parted like the Red Sea, creating a wide path between Dominic and Vanessa. "You're late, Dominic," Vanessa said, her voice trembling slightly before she regained her composure. "And you brought pets." She looked at Sarah with pure venom. "I see you found the little human stray. Did you pick her up off the street?" Dominic smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. "Careful. Vanessa, you are speaking to the mother of the air." "Air." Alpha Roth stepped forward, sniffing the air. "I smell human." "Dominic, the girl is a half-breed, a mongrel. She has no claim to the Smith line, and neither does this." "Baker." Sarah felt the insults like physical slaps, but she remembered Dominic's words. "Stand next to me." She squeezed Dominic's arm. "A half-breed child cannot inherit," Vanessa announced to the room, playing to the crowd. "And a human cannot be Luna. It is against the sacred laws Dominic Smith has polluted his bloodline. I call for a vote of no confidence." Murmurs broke out. The wolves were traditionalists. The idea of a human Luna was taboo. "She is not just a human," Dominic's voice boomed, silencing the room. "She is my fated mate." "Prove it," Vanessa shrieked, losing her cool. "You marked a human whore and called it fate. It's a trick, a tattoo." She lunged forward, grabbing Sarah's arm. "Let's see if the mark is real. Don't touch her." Dominic roared, his eyes flashing gold, but before he could move. Sarah reacted. She didn't pull away. She stepped into Vanessa's space. She turned her back to the crowd and swept her hair aside, exposing the nape of her neck. The mark was there. The crescent moon being devoured. "Look closely." "Vanessa," Sarah said, her voice surprisingly steady. As the eyes of the room focused on the mark, something impossible happened. The mark began to glow. It started as a faint silver light, then pulsed brighter, matching the rhythm of Dominic's heartbeat across the room. It wasn't ink. It was living magic. The moon goddess. An elder wolf in the crowd gasped. She blesses the union. But the drama wasn't over. Daisy, seeing her mother being yelled at, decided she had had enough. She let go of Dominic's hand and stomped her combat boots toward Vanessa. "You are a mean lady," Daisy declared. "Get away from me, you little mongrel!" Vanessa spat, raising her hand to strike the child. Snap! The sound of bone breaking echoed through the hall. Vanessa didn't hit Daisy. She couldn't. Daisy had caught Vanessa's wrist in mid-air. The 5-year-old girl held the grown woman's arm, her tiny fingers digging into the flesh. Daisy looked up, and for the first time, the entire room saw it. Daisy's eyes weren't just grey. They were swirling with a deep, violet storm the colour of an Alpha Prime. "My daddy said," Daisy spoke, her voice echoing with a supernatural distortion that made the chandeliers shake. "Don't touch the merchandise." Daisy shoved Vanessa back. The force of the push sent Vanessa flying 10 feet through the air. She crashed into the buffet table, collapsing into a pile of shrimp cocktails and broken glass. Silence. Total, absolute silence. Alpha Roth dropped his drink. Dominic stepped forward, placing a hand on Daisy's shoulder. He looked at the terrified crowd, at the council members who were staring at his daughter with open mouths. "My daughter," Dominic announced, his voice filled with dark pride, "is not a half-breed. She is the first wolf-born witch in 3 centuries. Her mother carries the moon mark. Her father is the Alpha King." He looked down at Vanessa, who was groaning on the floor. "Ruined. Does anyone else wish to challenge my family?" No one moved. Sarah looked at her daughter, then at her mate. She realized then that the danger wasn't over. They had won the room, but they had just revealed to the world that Daisy wasn't just a wolf. She was a weapon. And in the shadows of the balcony, a figure watched, a man with a scar running down his left eye. Kieran Blackwood, the alpha of the Northern Rogues. He smiled, pulling out his phone. "The girl is the key," he whispered into the receiver. "Initiate Phase 2. We take the child tonight." The applause inside the ballroom had barely faded when Dominic shoved the heavy industrial door open, ushering Sarah and Daisy into the cold, damp air of the hotel's loading dock. The transition was jarring. One moment, they were surrounded by crystal chandeliers and the clinking of champagne glasses. The next, they were plunged into the gritty reality of a Seattle back street. The air here didn't smell of perfume and power. It smelled of wet concrete, diesel fumes, and something else, something metallic and sharp that made the hair on Sarah's arms stand up. "Dominic, you're hurting me," Sarah gasped, stumbling as he practically dragged her toward the waiting line of black SUVs. His grip on her waist was bruising, his body tense as a coiled spring. "We aren't taking the car," Dominic growled, scanning the shadows. His golden eyes were darting frantically, tracking movement that Sarah couldn't see. "Silas, take the girl. Go to the safe house. Do not stop at red lights. Do not stop for police." "Daddy," Daisy whimpered, sensing the shift in the atmosphere. She clung to Dominic's tuxedo jacket, burying her face in his neck. "The bad men are outside." Dominic froze. He looked down at his daughter, his expression shattering for a split second. "Where? Baby, where do you smell them?" Daisy didn't have to answer. Floodlights, blinding and harsh, snapped on from the rooftops of the surrounding warehouses, turning the dark alley into a stage of blinding white. Sarah screamed, shielding her eyes. Dominic roared, spinning around to cover his family with his own body, his growl vibrating deep in his chest like an earthquake. From the glare, a slow, rhythmic clapping echoed. "I must admit," a voice drawled, slick and heavy with arrogance, "I didn't think you'd actually bring the brat to the party. I thought I'd have to siege the penthouse. You made this so much easier for me. Dominic." The lights dimmed just enough to reveal the blockade. The exit of the alley was sealed by 3 armored trucks. Standing in front of them was Kieran Blackwood, the alpha of the Northern Rogues. He was a nightmare of a man, standing nearly 7 feet tall, wearing a long coat lined with the fur of wolves he had killed in challenges. A jagged scar ran from his temple to his jaw, pulling his lip into a permanent sneer. He wasn't alone. 20 men, armed not just with assault rifles but with jagged, silver-tipped spears, flanked him. They were rogues, wolves without a pack, devoid of honor, driven only by greed and bloodlust. "Kieran," Dominic spat the name like a curse. "You have no business in my territory. Step aside, or I will paint this alley with your entrails." Kieran laughed, a dry, rasping sound. "Always the poet. But look at you. You're wearing a tuxedo. You're domesticated. You have a human pet and a half-breed pup. You aren't the Alpha King anymore. You're a family man. And families are weak." He raised a hand. "Take the child. Kill the parents. But leave the woman's face intact. I want to see if the rumors about the mark are true before I dispose of her." "Over my dead body," Sarah shouted, surprise giving way to a fierce, maternal rage. "That is the plan, sweetheart," Kieran smirked. Dominic didn't wait. He didn't bargain. He moved with a speed that blurred the air. "Get back," he shouted to Sarah, shoving her behind a dumpster as he launched himself at the first line of attackers, but Kieran had prepared for this. He didn't fight fair. "Now," Kieran commanded. A loud thwump echoed through the alley. From the rooftops, 4 heavy cannons fired. They didn't shoot bullets. They shot massive, weighted nets woven from pure, electrified silver. Dominic, mid-leap, saw them too late. The nets crashed down on him, slamming him into the wet pavement. "Ah!" The scream that tore from Dominic's throat was not human. The silver burned on contact, sizzling against his skin like acid. Smoke rose from his tuxedo as the mesh dug into his flesh, neutralizing his strength, sapping his ability to shift. He thrashed, trying to tear the metal, but the electricity convulsed his muscles, leaving him shaking and vulnerable. "No," Sarah screamed, scrambling out from her hiding spot. "Dominic, oh, Mommy!" Daisy cried out, terrified, as Silas tried to pull her back. Kieran walked casually toward the trapped Alpha, his heavy boots crunching on the gravel. He looked down at Dominic, who was snarling and snapping, his eyes glowing with helpless fury. "Look at the king!" Kieran mocked, spitting on Dominic's face. "Trapped like a common dog." He looked up at his men. "Grab the girl!" 2 rogues lunged past Sarah, heading straight for Silas and Daisy. Silas, the loyal beta, fought bravely. He shifted partially, his claws extending, and slashed the throat of the first attacker. But he was outnumbered. The second rogue clubbed him over the head with the butt of a rifle. Silas collapsed, and Daisy was ripped from his arms. "Let me go!" Daisy shrieked, kicking and biting. Her eyes flared violet, and the rogue holding her yelped as his jacket suddenly caught fire. But he didn't let go. He slapped a silver collar around her small neck, dampening her magic instantly. Daisy went limp, sobbing. "No, Daisy." Sarah scrambled forward, but a heavy hand grabbed her hair, jerking her back. It was Kieran. He pulled her flush against his chest, the smell of stale tobacco and old blood assaulting her senses. He pressed the cold barrel of a heavy-caliber pistol against her temple. "Stop struggling, little Baker," Kieran whispered in her ear. "Or I blow your brains out right in front of your daughter." Sarah froze. She couldn't breathe. She looked at Dominic, who was still pinned under the net, blood trickling from his mouth. He stopped thrashing when he saw the gun at her head. His eyes met hers, filled with an apology, filled with a desperate, agonizing love. "I failed you," his eyes seemed to say. Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs like a trapped bird. This was it. This was how it ended. After 6 years of hiding, after finding him again, after the dress, the gala, the hope, it was ending in a dirty alley. No, the thought wasn't hers. It was primal. It was ancient. "You are not a victim," the voice inside her whispered. It was her wolf. The wolf she had suppressed for 6 years. The wolf that had recognized the Alpha King before she even knew his name. "You are the Luna." Sarah's breathing shifted. She looked at the moon, hanging full and heavy above the skyline. She felt the silver light hitting her skin, not burning like it did Dominic, but charging her. She remembered the weight on her thigh, the obsidian dagger. "You think I'm weak?" Sarah whispered, her voice trembling, not with fear, but with adrenaline. Kieran chuckled, tightening his grip on her hair. "I think you're a human whore who got lucky. You have no claws. You have no fangs. You are nothing." "I am not nothing," Sarah said, her voice rising, gaining a strange, harmonic resonance. "I am the mother of a witch. I am the mate of a king." She didn't try to pull away. Instead, she dropped her weight, stomping her heel viciously onto Kieran's instep. As he roared in surprise, loosening his grip for a fraction of a second, Sarah spun. She didn't run. She drew the dagger. It was a fluid motion, practiced in her mind 1,000 times since Dominic gave it to her. The obsidian blade, black as void, slashed upward. It didn't kill him. Sarah wasn't a soldier, but it sliced a deep, jagged line across Kieran's forearm. He dropped the gun, howling in pain. "You bitch!" Kieran roared, backhanding her. Sarah flew backward, hitting the brick wall hard. Her vision swam. Taste of copper filled her mouth. But she didn't stay down. She looked up, her eyes flashing. "Daisy!" Sarah screamed, her voice carrying a command that rippled through the air. "Call them, Daisy," held by the rogue near the truck. Heard her mother. Despite the collar dampening her magic, the bond was deeper than magic. It was blood. Daisy opened her mouth and let out a high-pitched, piercing scream. It wasn't a scream for help. It was a summons. The alley went silent for a heartbeat. Then, the ground began to vibrate. From the sewers, from the rooftops, from the shadows. They came. The city of Seattle answered the call of the wolf-born witch. First, it was the rats, thousands of them, pouring out of the drainage grates like a grey flood. They swarmed up the legs of the rogues, biting, scratching, creating instant panic. Then, the crows, a murder of crows, hundreds strong. Dove from the telephone wires, pecking at the eyes of the gunman. Then, the stray dogs. Mangy, starving, fierce dogs from every corner of the district, rushing the alley with bared teeth. "What is this magic?" Kieran screamed, swatting at the birds dive-bombing his face. Kill them, kill the witch. But his men were in chaos. They were firing blindly into the swarm of animals, missing their targets, shooting each other in the confusion. The rogue holding Daisy dropped her as a German shepherd latched onto his arm. Daisy scrambled away, ripping the collar off with a burst of accidental telekinetic force that shattered the lock. "Daddy now," Daisy yelled. Dominic, seeing his family fight, seeing the chaos, felt a surge of power that defied biology. The sight of Sarah bleeding, the sound of Daisy's voice, it overrode the silver poisoning, with a roar that shattered the windows of the parked cars. Dominic grew. His muscles swelled, tearing through the burning net. He snapped the silver strands as if they were spider webs. He stood up, a massive, hulking beast of shadow and rage. Smoke curled from his fur, but he didn't feel the pain. He only felt the kill. He locked eyes with Kieran, clutching his bleeding arm, looked at the monster he had unleashed. For the first time, the rogue alpha looked small. "Dominic." "Wait," Kieran stammered, backing up. "We can negotiate. The council." Dominic didn't negotiate. He pounced. He covered the 20 feet between them in a single bound. He hit Kieran with the force of a freight train, slamming him into the side of the armored truck so hard the metal buckled inward. The fight was brutal and short. Kieran tried to shift, but Dominic didn't give him the chance. Dominic's jaws clamped around Kieran's shoulder, shaking him like a rag doll. There was a sickening crunch of bone, a scream cut short, and then Dominic threw the rogue leader to the ground. Dominic placed a heavy paw on Kieran's chest, pinning him. He leaned down, his muzzle inches from Kieran's terrified face, and growled a low, guttural sound that translated clearly in the mind of every wolf present. "Yield or die." "I yield," Kieran sobbed, broken and defeated. "I yield, take the territory. Just let me live." Around them, the other rogues, seeing their leader broken, dropped their weapons. The rats scurried away. The crows returned to the wires, watching silently. The silence that followed was heavy. The only sounds were the heavy panting of the wolves and the distant wail of sirens. Dominic didn't kill him. Death was too easy. He stepped back, shifting seamlessly back into his human form. He stood naked, bruised, and burned. But he looked like a god of war. "You will live," Dominic said, his voice raspy. "You will live to tell every rogue, every enemy, and every doubter what happens when you touch the Smith family. You will tell them that the Wolf King is back, and he is not alone." Dominic turned away, dismissing Kieran as if he were trash. He walked toward the wall where Sarah was sliding down, clutching her ribs. "Sarah!" he choked out, falling to his knees beside her. His hands hovered over her, afraid to touch her, afraid he would hurt her more. "Sarah, look at me." Sarah opened her eyes. One was swollen shut, and her lip was split, but she smiled. She reached out a trembling hand and touched the burns on his chest. "We won," she whispered. "You won," Dominic corrected, tears cutting tracks through the grime on his face. He pulled her into his arms, burying his face in her hair. "You saved us. You saved me. Mommy, we—" Daisy came running, stumbling over the debris. She threw herself onto them, wrapping her small arms around both their necks. "I called the birdies," Daisy sobbed, hiding her face in Sarah's chest. "I didn't mean to hurt them. I just wanted them to stop." "Shh, baby. You did good." Sarah soothed, rocking her. You are so brave. You saved Daddy. Dominic wrapped his massive arms around both of them, shielding them from the world. He looked up at the moon, closing his eyes, and let out a long, deep breath. The rage was gone. The fear was gone. All that was left was them. Pack. And that is where we leave Dominic and Sarah tonight, bloody, battered, but finally, truly unbreakable. In the end, it wasn't the title of Alpha or the power of a king that saved the day. It was the fierce heart of a mother and the unchecked magic of a little girl who just wanted her family to be safe. The rogues were arrested. Kieran was exiled to the wastelands, and the Smith Pack entered a new golden age, one ruled not just by strength, but by a Luna who proved that you don't need claws to be the most dangerous person in the room. But the world of the wolf is never quiet for long. There are rumors of what happens when Daisy grows up, and what powers she might unlock next. If this story kept you on the edge of your seat, please do me a huge favor, hit that like button. It helps the algorithm find more listeners like you. And if you haven't already, click subscribe and turn on the notification bell. I'll be back next week with a brand new series that is even darker and more romantic. Until then, stay wild, and thanks for watching.